Did you get my message about the seats? The garlic seats? Yeah,
Excuse me, there was a key left in the bathroom, the women's bathroom. I was wondering if it's anybody's.
it's all the energy in that seat. Instead of,
I'd had a long walk home.
six different things. Oh, I don't think I can do it from here, but let me. It is fine. I know, you're yeah, it's all on my file upstairs. I'm sorry. So I'll put it up here.
Probably not the area.
All right, everybody, it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to start the meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call when you're ready.
Barkle.
Here.
Loest.
Here.
Kettering.
Here.
Hummel.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Welsh.
Here.
Clark.
Here. All right, so everybody present. Everybody had a chance to go over the minutes from the previous meeting. Unless there's any changes, I need a motion to approve those minutes.
I make a motion.
Second, Loest.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Is there any items to be added to the agenda or any changes?
No.
All right. Then I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Move approval.
Second, Loest.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carried. Conflict of interest declarations, we can start with Sherry.
Loest, none.
Kettering, none.
Welsh, none.
Barkle, none.
Hummel, none.
Nelson, none.
Clark, none.
All right, no conflicts of interest. First agenda item is scheduled for 7:05, so as usual, we got a few minutes to wait for that. Would you like to move up Plat? Yep. So first plat is the Yankton replat.
Yes. This is right on the northeast corner of the county. Irene city limits are right here. They own this parcel. They wanted to add about an acre to it on this side. I can show you right there. It would have been a complete acre, but there's a fence here, and they didn't want to mess with that fence, so they just added on right here. Very straightforward. Makes it a little more conforming. Allows them to have a little more room on the side.
It was a non-conforming lot that's moving closer.
Correct.
I don't see any issues with it. If anybody
Move
else has anything.
approval of the plat.
Second, Hummel.
All right, we can do a roll call vote when you're ready, Bill.
Barkle,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Right, next is the Jacobson plat.
This one is another pretty straightforward. Let me get it here. They purchased this parcel. This is right off of Highway 52. They're just dividing it into two parcels. Both parcels will be conforming. There's one parcel here and one parcel here. This parcel has an access already there. You can see on the plat off of 52, and they've confirmed with South Dakota DOT that's valid. This parcel will have access off of, is it 434? 434, yes.
Unless there's any problems with it or any questions, entertain a motion.
Move approval. Welch.
Second. Kettering.
Roll call vote when you're ready, Bill.
Barkle,
Yes.
Loest,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Hummel,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Okay, we just have a minute here yet. All right, being 7:05, the agenda item is the Swan Lake Wind LLC conditional use permit. Applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a large wind energy conversion system per Article 5, Section 507, and Article 26, Section 2605. Applicant is requesting to place 37 large wind towers in agricultural district throughout Mayfield and Turkey Valley Townships in Yankton County. Said towers will be placed in sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 11, 13, 14, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, and 28 Township 96 North, Range 55 West to the 5th PM, and Section 6, 7, 17, 20, 28, 31, 32, and 33 of Township 96 North, Range 54 West to the 5th PM, Yankton County, South Dakota.
So they're applying for a large wind energy conversion system. They've submitted all the documents they're required. This is probably more than I can explain, so it's probably best the applicants are here just to have them answer questions if there are any, if that's okay.
All right.
Oh, yeah, they wanted to do a short presentation.
Yep.
Go ahead. I think it's already in there. So you want to, is it PowerPoint? What's that?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Gökhan Andy. I'm a South Dakota resident. I'm a project director with Nexar Energy Resources and an engineer over 20 years of experience developing renewable energy projects. I'm responsible for the Swan Lake Wind project. Tonight, my team and I walk you through the Swan Lake Wind project and provide you with information related to the conditional use permit application you are hearing tonight. Nexstar Energy Resources has been investing in South Dakota since 2003. We own and operate 4 wind energy centers in the state of South Dakota. We are working on developing additional energy projects, including Swan Lake Wind. The benefits of Nexstar's investment in South Dakota amount to approximately $2 million per year in land payments, more than $4.9 million in payroll, and almost $2.1 million in property taxes. Swan Lake Wind is a project that's being developed in both Turner and Yankton counties. Approximately 60% of the project is in Turner County and roughly 40% in Yankton County. Swan Lake Wind is proposed to be up to 240 megawatts, which is around 97 turbines. The turbines we are going to use are GE 2.8 megawatt turbines. In Yankton County, we are proposing to have 37 turbines. These turbines will generate approximately 93.89 megawatts of energy. Landowner participation in the Swan Lake Wind project is 100% voluntary. Project locations for each turbine have been carefully selected to ensure that they meet or exceed all ordinance setback requirements. The map displayed on the screen shows the proposed turbine locations. We also see the project boundary in dark red, the county boundary in blue, and a 2-mile project boundary buffer in yellow. Again, landowner participation is based on voluntary agreements. Swan Lake Wind is committed to meeting all of the Yankton County Ordinance decommissioning requirements. First of all Swan Lake Wind landowner agreements guarantee that project infrastructure on their land will be decommissioned. Decommissioning will not come at a cost to the county nor to our landowners. Swan Lake Wind bears the cost of decommissioning. At the end of the life of the project, all above ground infrastructure and underground infrastructure down to 4 feet below the surface will be removed as per the ordinance. Swan Lake Wind is committed to going above and beyond the requirements of Yankton County's wind ordinance. First, a decommissioning plan and cost estimate will be prepared by a third-party engineering firm and submitted to the county 6 months prior to construction. Second, appropriate surety for decommissioning in a form approved by the county will be in place prior to construction. Furthermore, we'll update the decommissioning cost every 5 years to ensure an appropriate level of surety remains in place with the county. There are many portions of the timeline that are moving together at the same time. Tonight's hearing is a significant milestone in developing the Swan Lake Wind project. We are on track to construct and have Swan Lake Wind in commercial operation by year-end 2027. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Chris Olson. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, members of the public. Good to be before you again. As you know, my name is Dr. Chris Olson. I hold a PhD in environmental health sciences, and over the last 15 years, I've been heavily involved in developing of wind energy projects, proper siting and guidance in over 27 states across the country, as well as in Canada. Certainly have heard a lot from the public over the last couple of months, and we're going to touch on some of that. But tonight, I'm actually really happy that we're here tonight to actually talk about the Swan Lake Wind Project and its proper design. And right from the outset, I will say that working with the Swan Lake Wind Project, this is a properly designed wind project. I've heard on a number of occasions that this is a heavily dense county, that there's a lot of homes, that all the pictures that you see are no homes. In fact, there are 285 homes. 285 homes within a mile and a half of a turbine in this Swan Lake project for Yankton County. Now, to put that in perspective, if I'm in Illinois, Indiana, New York, places like that, there could be 1,000 to 1,500 homes within a mile and a half. Certainly, this is more dense than if I'm in northern North Dakota, where there might be 40 homes. But certainly by no means are we outside of that bounds. And the key to this is that the siting criteria that we're using, the state, your own ordinance and the like, we're protecting every individual home. So whether there's one home, 285 homes, or 1,000 homes, we're making sure protection for everybody. So as GoCan just took you through, like for example in the decommissioning, they're committing to extra things that are not necessarily in your ordinance on decommissioning, doing things earlier and the like. The same thing with the design of the project. So your ordinance right now for sound requires no more than 60 decibels at the property line of non-participating property line. So 60, you have to meet that 60 decibels at a property line. It says nothing about homes, it says nothing about anything else. Well, we're committed to, and what I would encourage you to do, in fact, is you can even write this in as a condition. And some of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about, I would encourage you to write it in conditions. There'll be no more than 45 decibels of sound at participating and non-participating homes in the project. The next thing that you have is that you have no shadow flicker requirement in your ordinance. Following state guidance again, and then many other states around you and surrounding states, we're committed to no more than 30 hours of shadow flicker at non-participating homes. Finally, when we look at then the setback distances, right now your ordinance says 1,000 feet to participating homes, and I believe it's 1,320 feet or a quarter mile to non-participating homes. The project has been designed such that no home will be closer than 1,500 feet, whether it's participating or non-participating to any turbine. In fact, for the non-participating homes, the closest home will be over 1,600 feet, and about the same for the participating homes. So again, these are commitments that we're making tonight. They're here in writing, they're in the presentation. We encourage you to, that you could put those in. Setback distances to property lines. Right now, your ordinance for non-participating property lines, your ordinance requires no more than 110% of the total height of the turbine, which would be, in these case, 500-foot, I think it's 499 feet. I'm going to call them 500-foot turbines for ease. That's 550 feet. Candidly, the closest one, I believe, is about 561 feet to a non-participating line, and that's to a cornfield, all right? The turbines that are within 1,000 feet of any of the property lines, so there's about 20 of them, give or take, that would be about 1,000 feet of property line. All but 4 of those are to cornfields or to agricultural fields, not to lands where people have homes. This is a properly cited project. It conforms to both your ordinance as well as to state level requirements. So we're going to go through them. So we had, or the project team had, Epsilon Associates, and you have in front of you, we're giving you hard copies. I know that they came to you in email on Sunday night, but it's just finalizing from the Epsilon team. They've been working on this for several months. The Epsilon team is headed up by a guy named Rich Lampeter. Rich is one of the foremost noise and shadow flicker modelers across the country. Their team has worked over 100 wind projects over the last 20 years across the country, including right here in South Dakota. They were working on the Crown Ridge projects. Rich has testified in front of the PUC. So what you have in front of you is well done, excellent engineering reports. So your ordinance requirement, again, 60 decibels to property line. So as you can see, and it's easier to see in your reports, but this is just sound. These are the contour maps. Now, in your report, you'll find for every home, that 285 homes, within a mile and a half, we have the sound levels for each of those homes. Right here in the report, you'll see the contour map. First and foremost, for your ordinance, 60 decibels. There's not even a 60 decibel level on this map. I think the highest is 55, and that all will stay on participating properties right in close proximity, a couple hundred feet from the turbines. There will be no turbine sound that exceeds 60 decibels off the participating parcel where the turbine is. So we meet your ordinance for that. Again, both myself, Mr. Lampeter went further with NextEra and said, Yep, that's good. We're gonna keep that. That'll help enjoyment of property, all those other things. Let's conform to the state standard regardless of the fact that it's in the ordinance. Let's go to 45 decibels at non-participating homes. And in fact, as you'll see in the report, not only is it for the non-participating homes, but also the participating homes, nobody in the county will receive more than 45 decibels of sound at their homes. So what does that mean? Again, you can put it in as a condition of requirement that they meet that. Now, what does that mean? So first of all, as I've talked to you folks in a lot of time, we can do it more if you want later on. The 20 years of history, the 150 research studies around the world, whether here in the US, Europe, Australia, Canada, the like, 45 decibels is a sound limit at people's homes on properties that will ensure protection of sleep, which is first and foremost for any noise source. We want people to be able to sleep over the next 25 years. Bad things happen if we disturb people's sleep, no question. We're going to do that. Also, all the things you hear about mental health, physical health and the like, including infrasound. Infrasound, low frequency noise, is a component of the sound. All of these studies contain those details. You've got it in a report I sent you before. This accounts for all of it, ensures that we're protecting people's health. And then most importantly, and as we've heard before, but I want to be able to enjoy my property. We know, again, the 20-year history of South Dakota, all around the Midwest, right across the US. This is a level where if you're gardening out in your garden today, you can garden out in your garden tomorrow, you're not going to be disturbed. This is a proven sound limit, and the 60 decibels of the property line as well as for your homes. Another commitment that I'm making right now on behalf of the Swan Lake Wind Project that I would encourage you to put in as a condition, not in your ordinance currently, is that they commit to doing a post-construction round of monitoring. So having somebody like Epsilon, a third-party engineering firm that does this professionally, to come in and then prove to you folks within a year, typically it's within a year of construction. And the reason why we say within a year of construction, they need to hit the right time of year to make sure that the worst case scenario is there. So I'm making it up now, but let's say construction ends in the middle of the summer. That's not necessarily the right time to do the sound study. Maybe it's in the winter when the leaves are off the trees and everything else. But within 1 year, and certainly if you get complaints before that, prove that the 45 decibels of the house they're committed to is accurate and the 60 decibels of the property line. It is something, candidly, the state's going to require anyway at the PUC. I'd recommend you put it in as a condition of approval here as well. When it comes to shadow flicker, again, no required in the ordinance now. I know the Wind Task Force put it in, and I fully agree with it. It's that no more than 30 hours of actual shadow flicker at a non-participating house. What I can tell you, if you were to look at the shadow flicker report, again, conducted by Mr. Lampeter and his team of engineers, is that the highest level of shadow flicker at any non-participating home is no more than 18 hours and 37 minutes. Almost half of the state requirement. That is a low level, and the majority of homes within a mile and a half will have no shadow flicker. When you look at these shadow flicker maps, we call it the butterfly effect. Essentially, if you've got a let's say this turbine here, these homes over here, so they've got a turbine to the east of them. So as the sun rises in the morning, the shadow flicker will be to the west of the turbines, right? So the turbines are looking to the east. As the sun sets, if you've got homes on this side, the shadow flicker will occur on this side. That little blue line is the 0 hours of shadow flicker. So all these homes, no shadow flicker. Yes, there'll be some homes between 0 and 10 hours a year. And again, the highest one for a non-participating home would be just over 18 hours. Again, well within the side. Shadow flicker, again, all of the research, all of the studies done, the two leading experts in what we call photoepilepsy, so that if you can seizure because of flashing lights, those Japanese cartoons back about 20 years ago that were actually causing seizures in kids that were well below that flash frequency. They don't induce seizures, they don't induce migraines, any other health effects. Candidly, it can be an annoyance or a nuisance, right? And we're trying to reduce that. The 30 hours of shadow flicker, not just here in this state, but across almost all states, almost a universal standard to make sure we're keeping that annoyance low. That's on the health side, okay? And I do believe the project's properly designed for health. The other component, of course, is safety, and that's where your setbacks come in. So the reason we have a setback to homes is not for the protection of the safety. We do that to property lines. That distance to homes of give or take 1,500 feet, you need that to get to the 45 decibels. Okay, so if you, like for example, where you've got that 1,320 feet in the current ordinance, we probably couldn't have met 45 decibels there. Now, we would have met your 60 decibel requirement in the ordinance. We wouldn't have got to 45, probably would have been 46, 47. That's where we're about 1,500 feet. We don't purposely try to put these by homes. The key setbacks are, of course, to property lines for safety. Okay, these are the things that we've talked about these a bit before. You can have ice build up on turbines under certain conditions. It's actually a fairly rare event here in South Dakota, even though trust me, I know it gets cold here. I've been in a Quonset hut up, north of here in a public meeting at, minus 30. I know it gets cold here. The thing is, you get icing conditions, you really need to have about that perfect condition of about 32 to 34 degrees, the right humidity, a lot of humidity in the air. You can get some ice build up like you do on power lines and that at the time, right? What happens with turbines is they shut themselves off during icing conditions. And the reason why is that it builds up vibration on the blades. It's going to wreck the turbine. So that's something that's already built in. But even if you do have, so typically turbine shuts down, ice sheds onto the property right at the base of the turbines. That's a worker safety issue. And so for the workers that are working around these, if they're in icing conditions, they're not allowed to go near the turbines. Just like you don't want to walk through the buildings downtown Yankton here sometimes when you have ice fall under them, right? That's the condition there. You can get a little bit of ice throw happening before they actually shut down. Typically, that's within the turbine height. Okay, it doesn't go flinging, too much further than that. That's why that 110% to non-participating property lines ensures the safety of the people outside of the property of the turbines. You're not going to get ice throw. There's never been a documented case, whether here it's in the US or anywhere in the world, where somebody has been struck, certainly not killed, but even struck by ice because we have these appropriate setbacks. You can get things like tower collapse. Again, rare, but it can happen. And if a tower collapses, you can see this picture down in the bottom left, they basically fall upon themselves. They're engineered structures, right? They don't fall over and go 2 miles down the way. They actually just crumple on top of themselves. That 110% to a neighboring property line ensures if this was to occur, the turbine falls on the participating property. Then it gets cleaned up and everything else. The next one I'm going to talk about is blade failure. Typically, we're looking at about 1 blade fails in 100,000 a year. This doesn't mean that they don't get cracks and structural failure in the blade that the engine, so they monitor the blades every year. They've got drones up there flying to make sure are the blades all good structurally. If what they do is they catch, if it's a structural issue, they'll catch it before you actually have what we call a failure, and they fall to the ground. They might get replaced, but they don't then fall. You do get blade failure. It can happen through things like lightning strikes, excessive lightning strikes. All right, you guys get lightning here all the time. We know the towers are designed such that there's essentially a lightning rod at the tip of the blade that runs down the blade, down the tower, and grounded into the ground. And so, therefore, most lightning strikes, not that. On occasion, you get an excessive high voltage lightning strike on a turbine. It'll hit the blade, and you will get things like this looking like the blade, where typically, and you can have small fragments that'll come off, super high winds and everything else. The majority of the blade actually falls to the base of the tower. You can have some of these smaller fragments that are thrown. They typically are thrown within the tip height of the turbine blade. It's a cleanup issue after, has to be done on the participating landowners. If you got super high winds during that time, you could have some of those fragments being blown off of the property onto the neighbor's property. That's a cleanup issue. It's a responsibility of the company. It's not going to injure or harm anyone, but certainly has to be cleaned up. Okay? Fires. You can Google wind turbine fire, you get some really dramatic stuff. I mean, there's one in Texas where you get these smoke whirly plumes coming off the turbine that caught fire. They do occur. It's extremely rare. Typically, we have about less than 10 across the 70,000 turbines that we have in the US a year, typically about less than 10. That can vary. Sometimes it's 4 or 5. Sometimes it might be maybe 15 a year. Across that entire fleet will catch fire. How do they catch fire? Again, just like a car fire, they are a mechanical structure. You can have an engine fire in your truck or your tractor. It can happen here. Also, again, if a turbine is struck by lightning, excessive lightning, if it doesn't ground, it can occur. So high likelihood you'll never have a fire in one of these turbines. As soon as I say that, a year after construction, you're going to have a turbine fire here. So it could happen. If it does, what happens is, and again, you can write this in, I didn't see it in the ordinance, you could write it in as a condition of approval, that 6 months prior to construction, that the Swan Lake Wind team will meet with the emergency management services for the county. They will meet with the fire chief and the firefighters. They will develop an emergency response plan. What that plan then typically takes, then there's prior to construction, during construction, then post-construction, they meet with the fire chief and staff, and they actually walk through the site, they talk about the fire hazards and the what if. In the unlikely event, but if it does occur, if we do get a turbine fire, what happens is that all of these turbines are monitored 2 ways. One is there's the local operations manager. You heard there's going to be 5 or 6, maybe 8 folks that work here full time. The operations manager If he's not on vacation, he turns it to his deputy or her deputy. And what they do is their cell phone and their tablet is going 24 hours a day monitoring the turbines. They will get an alarm, okay? Even more so than that, because they're gonna, have to sleep and everything else. For Nextera specifically, which Swan Lake would be under, and all companies have the same system, the major wind turbine companies, they have a remote sensing operation in Florida that monitors all their 13,000 plus turbines, their solar projects, their battery projects across the country. Immediately upon an alarm trip, first of all, the turbine will shut itself down, but if it doesn't, it immediately trips in the emergency response center. The call goes out to 911. Every one of them will have a location. The fire department will know where they all are, and away you go. The fire department is not asked to put out a 300-foot fire, not at all. They burn themselves out. What the fire department's asked to do, what they train for, just like a barn fire or anything else, you don't want it spreading, right? So if it's a dry day in the end of August, early September, you don't want the hayfield going up. You don't want the grass field going up in a pasture. So they're there to put out spot fires. We do not see, if they do occur, we don't see the spread. Your setback distance of 110% to property lines is appropriate to make sure protection of safety, as well as then again that 1,500 feet that I'd encourage you to write in for homes. Aircraft detection lighting system, ADLS. I think we've talked a little bit about this over the top, but I just want to be clear that your ordinance actually does require this. And how does your ordinance require it? And we're happy to, again, have you write it in as an explicit condition. But your ordinance says you've got to blah, blah, blah. You got to follow Federal Aviation Administration. Now, the FAA doesn't dictate you need this. What dictates that you need this is the South Dakota state statutes and any other agency. Well, there is a South Dakota state statute, SDCL 49-41B 25-2, that in 2019, what the House passed and the governor signed into law is a wind energy facility, including aircraft ADLS. Every new wind energy system since 2019 in the state has to have this. Now, what they do is they have to apply to the FAA, and I recognize you got a little local regional airport here, and there's a couple airstrips, and all those all got taken into account. Okay, this looks like a perfect candidate site for one of these projects to be granted the approval, but it still has to go through FAA to get that approval. What it is that, so GoCan was telling you there's going to be 97 turbines potentially across both counties, right? For you folks, there's going to be 37 here, and then the rest, the other 60 up in Turner. For a project like that, you're typically looking at 2 radar systems. There's probably going to be one in the north, one down here in Yankton, or there'll be one in the east, one in the west. They hire a company. This is a company called Detect. They're one of the, the prominent, there's very few groups that do it. Detect's one, and I'm not promoting Detect, but I can tell you they're one of the groups that do this the best, where what they do is they look at the project, they apply to the FAA, and they're going to put up radar stations. Might be 2, might be 3 that they need to cover the entire site. They'll be at the perimeter of the site. And what this radar tower does is it detects low-flying aircraft coming into it. So the planes that are going over 30,000 feet to go over to Colorado do not set this off. What it's for is the default position for the wind farm is always lights on. What this system does is then take the lights down and off until it detects a plane coming in. The way it typically works is 3 nautical miles out. So if you got a little Cessna or something coming in, 3 nautical miles out, and give or take a couple thousand feet high, it will turn the lights back on until the aircraft is passed out of the area. Now, most small, aircraft like that do not fly at night. Certainly understand that there's a flight school up here where you're going to do nighttime training. It could happen. These systems, when you look at the project like Crown Ridge up a couple hours north of here, North Dakota was the first one that started this. Commissioner Fedorchuk there at their PSC decided well in advance they're the first state to implement it statewide. You guys followed very quickly suit. Typically the lights are going to be off 95 to 97% of the year. So you're not going to have those blinking red lights at night. Why do we care about that? Certainly I'm a big advocate of this for community benefit because, again, the lights don't cause health issues, but they can be annoying. Of course they can. You want your dark night, keeping your dark skies dark. That's the intention of this. And what we see is that when these are up, properly running, the lights will be off vast majority of the year, vast majority of the nights, minimizes light pollution, keeps the dark skies in the rural area dark. Again, I'd recommend you can put it in as a condition one way or another. They're going to have to apply for it when they go to the PUC. I'm almost done. The last thing we've certainly heard about compatibility with livestock and hunting. It's another area that I do a lot of work in. Your ordinance actually does require it. It says livestock protection. Permittees shall take precautions to protect livestock during all phases of the project. 70,000 turbines in the US, vast majority on agricultural land, grazing land. Here in South Dakota, I certainly can tell you with the, whatever it is, 20,000 plus turbines in Texas right now, a lot of that's on grazing land, horses and the like. The research is done. Unfortunately, there's some misinformation on the internet on things like horses and some other things. It is not the case. You graze, grow livestock right under the turbines, certainly any of the neighboring properties. It will not affect their livestock. At the end of the day, for hunting, when you look at, and I'm a hunter myself, you certainly, when you look at the kill records and, the state in the county prior to turbines being erected and then post, they remain the same or higher, not saying the turbines have more deer or the like, or antelope or wherever you're going to be here. The reality is they don't affect livestock or grazing. There's nothing being emitted from these turbines that are unique to do that. Now with that, of course, we'll have questions after I've got it. Professor Anderson has a couple slides just to finish off, and then we're here all night for you folks. Thank you.
Hi, so again, I'm Alan Klaus Anderson. I'm the chair of the energy practice group of the Polsinelli Law Firm, and I'm out of our Kansas City office. We're about 1,100 lawyers across the country, and with our energy group worked across the country. I'm also a professor at the University of Kansas School of Law, and these are some of the things we cover. So I'm going to cover two main areas, some of the economics, some kind of global economic, and then specific. We have the assessment of the tax numbers for the county, and we'll get into that. And then set the stage for the next part of the discussion here today. So the first is, and there's a myriad of good reports on this, from good either academic institution, private companies, like the Marusan Company, and the main main and biggest study of this, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory has kind of done the preeminent study on this in 2024. They actually did a previous one earlier. And all these studies will show that there is no impact to property values. And, in fact, some of those show increase, but they all show no economic impact. In fact, the Marusan Company included the South Dakota counties. And the thing about this issue, and I know there's people that will instantly think that's not the case, we actually have projects in South Dakota and more than 20-year record of those, and there hasn't been impact to property values. That's what the data shows, and so that's just the fact of the matter. So fortunately, we don't have to guess at this situation. It's been studied, and we have actual data, whether it's happened, not guessing or saying that we think it's going to happen, we know. So second, now we'll get into the actual taxes. So here's the report. This came from Dr. Loomis, who is with Strategic Economic Research. He's professor emeritus at Illinois State University. And the thing about South Dakota is you actually have a fairly simple to apply formula. There's fewer moving parts in it. So it provides us the information that will be pretty accurate on this. So obviously when you look at, this is year one, this is years 1 through 10 number, and this would be years 1 through 25. So in South Dakota, which is different than some places, some of the monies go to the state general fund. So that's the top line number there. And obviously that has, positive impact to the state. And this, by the way, is just for Yankton County. This number is obviously about, 40% is in Yankton, with 60% being in Turner, so that obviously we're paying a significant amount more, which has general benefits to the region as well. But this is just the Yankton numbers. The money that goes to the county and townships, year one will be $158,534, but years 1 through 10, $1.6 million. And if through years 25, we get to about $4 million. The school districts, who share equally in this, $158,500 plus in year one. And that goes through year 10. It's a formula that shrinks down. And we actually continue to pay this number, but starting in year 10, that money ends up going to the state and instead of to the school district. They net it out to the school district. So we don't show any increase from years 10 to 25, but in fact, we do continue to pay that number, but we wanted to show the impact to the county. So after year 10, in your school funding formula, they start to net out those amounts. But what you see there, and I don't think any of the schools would say they couldn't use another $1 million for years 1 through 10. So that's the impact there. And so then if you look at the overall impacts to the county, you're talking on a 25-year basis, $5 million plus, and when you add into obviously the state general funds, we'll pay in $8 million on behalf of the project that's sitting here in Yankton County. Obviously more than that when you include the neighboring county with Turner County as well. But that's just the direct tax benefits. I will just touch on these, and I won't belabor these, but these are actually enormous impacts that, as part of an economic impact study that we'll have for the county commission. There's There will be, even though this is temporary on the construction, it's a significant amount. So what you'll have is, hundreds of employees during that period of time. That's sales tax, that's direct payments into the county, and that has a real large, and that's, again, we've seen that in plenty of other counties. So while temporary, that is significant. The next is operation. There will be, as you heard, somewhere 5 to 8 employees, something like that, that will actually be full-time employees. And those are people that want to work in a location like this with families that move here, well-paying jobs, so they contribute as part of that, and all the kind of multiplier effect of that, plus all the indirect benefits that have employment benefits, the companies that will service the different the project, that'll have other opportunities to work with the company. That helps those companies and their employees. There'll be sales tax throughout, so anytime there's purchases, those things you should see, and you will see an increase in sales tax. And this is one that I think is important to me. I grew up in the rural area. The landowner payments. If you looked at the amount of farms and ranches in Yankton County from, say, 2017, it was more than there are now. That number is continuing to shrink in most places. There's farm bankruptcies. There's all the things that are happening in any of the counties where farming and ranching is part of it. In this case, those direct benefits, what we found and the studies show is when we have payments to landowners, they're more likely to invest in their farms and ranches. They're more likely to plan for succession planning, so the next generation, and people are more likely to stay. So I can't tell you how important that is to a community, because that helps the entirety of the community. And of course, all of that has multiple impacts in the community. When people have that money, there's the things they purchase locally and are able to benefit from those revenues. And of course, wind counties, and this is what they've also shown through the studies, when they host a wind project, and in fact, when they host multiple wind projects, it even has a greater benefit to that. But it creates better infrastructure. Schools are obviously an obvious one. That's an attraction for families to stay or to come to a community. So all of that has great economic impact both directly to the community and for the longevity in a rural place. Okay, so then that's kind of the economic part of things. As now we set things up for the next part of our discussion. The first part is in the CUP packet you have, and as was indicated by previously in the initial presentation, there's a completeness checklist that was checked by staff that each part of your ordinance was met by the CUP application. And we created the checklist in order to show that, so you can go through that. You can look at each of the sections to meet that. So that's an important part of it. The second is, and you all have obviously had a lot of different things recently in relation to the topic of wind energy. You've had the ordinance review process and that kind of thing. Well, and you have a great states council, so you'll attorney that you'll be able to, that I'm sure of counsel on this too. But this is a different function than that one is. That one has a legislative component to it. This is not that. This is now a situation where, and again, this is sometimes more for the people that are part of this process, because we move back and forth between those, because I think you probably all realize this. But when we do, obviously, that legislative function, there's more latitude within that process to investigate. There can be things that you're interested in that are outside the scope, and that can be part of it. When we're going through a CUP under a current ordinance, what we have is your county commission has set ordinances that are in place right now. And that means that those are the conditions upon which someone makes an application. With that, then it's not a question of whether you like this land use personally. You don't have to like or dislike this land use, but it is whether or not it is a permitted use with a conditional use permit, which this is. That comes from your county commission. At this point, you're more into a administrative function than you are one where you may change that. And again, in that part of your process, you are more legislative, but it's recommending body. In this case, you are functioning in a much more administrative situation. In this case, there is no question we have gone through the ordinance. We have met all the conditions that are required under the ordinance, of which your job is to check us on that, see if we've missed anything or not done that. Secondarily, you've heard, and there is no contravening or contrary evidence to this. This is a well-cited project. You have all the evidence we've submitted to you, shown how we're doing that, brought in the more than adequate expertise on that. And you also have a state level here. I actually think what South Dakota does in this is great, where you have then a body that sits above even your county commission to check it, to make sure we're doing this in a healthy and safe way, regardless of what a county does. You could approve things that maybe wouldn't be wise. Your state level body will actually make sure that it's done. So in this case, we have an administrative function, which we have met the requirements of the ordinance. In fact, more than in full. We brought even additional things where we go above and beyond it. You know that we have provided the evidence related to health and safety and beyond, and even economics. Many of those things, by the way, are not part of the ordinance requirements, so we've even provided more information than would even be required through your review process, which we're happy to do. But that's how we sit here today. Just kind of a reminder, probably more for the people who want you to exceed your authority and go beyond what's really part of that. And that's always a challenge when we kind of go between those roles. But I think it's the properly cited project, healthy and safe, and it's also, we fully met the requirements here. You also, if you look through the factors of what's used to review the CUP in addition, which again, your county commission has made the determination that wind energy is part of a healthy and safe and appropriate use within the county. It also meets all those approval factors. So with that, we have other experts here today, but we're happy to answer any questions from you all.
All right, thank you. So before we ask questions, I guess, a lot of this information was given to us late on Sunday, and we haven't had a chance to review all of it. But, and then also your presentation tonight has some information that we didn't have before. Could you provide that to us for additional review?
Yeah, are you talking about the economic information?
Well, kind of all of it. There's bits and pieces in each one of your presentations that was different from the packet that we received before.
You should have that now in front of you, right? It's part of the slide. So you should have that now in front. I think it should be in front of you somewhere as part of the papers that are there.
Okay, that's part of the packets that
Yeah,
was
and then
dropped
again-
off tonight.
Well, with the slide deck is what we provided tonight. Yeah, so that's there. Now, again, some of this information is in addition to that which is required under the ordinance. We've kind of gone above and beyond, and so some of this is not really part of these ordinance requirements. It's really additional information as opposed to that which is kind of contingent upon the review of the application. But we provided the slide deck. So the additional there would be the economic, which is the tax figures, which again are not part of the ordinance review.
Yeah, I understand that. And I guess under our ordinance, we do have the authority to place additional conditions on it in addition to what is in the ordinance under Article 26. So with the different things that you've provided, like the flicker analysis and noise study and everything, I think personally I would want more time to review it. So what I guess I would propose at this point is going through those analysis and everything is going to take me more time. I would feel more comfortable pushing this another month, but I would like to also hear public comment tonight on that, and then if there's any specific questions from the board after that, then we would address that. But I guess I would make a motion that we postpone any.
I would hold that until after public comment,
Okay,
and then the motion would be to continue,
yes,
so.
all right.
Alan, if I can, just one second. And Mr. Chair, I respect what you're saying. What I would like to point out is that unlike in your draft proposed ordinance that went up to the county commission that said, in that you would like to see the sound and shadow flicker reports, the information that's contained and required by the ordinance review, and I respect that you could do that. The reason we provided these after was to back up the statements that were in there. Certainly weren't required documents, didn't need to provide them to the commission. We wanted to make sure they were ready for that, for you to have. So, I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure that, we didn't hold these back. I didn't want you to think that we held these back.
Right, I understand that you're
final.
not, that
Yeah.
you weren't necessarily holding them back, but even during your own presentation, you said that this would be a reasonable thing to put a condition on, and we do have the authority to add conditions such as the flicker analysis, which isn't included in our current Article 26. And I'm saying we didn't have adequate time to review that.
Yeah, I respect that,
So-
Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that when we offered up these conditions today, it was just as we're suggesting that they are addition that you could put on top of that we think are reasonable. I'm not saying that you can't put other conditions on there. I'm just saying these are the ones we think would be reasonable. And I don't want to argue with you, Mr. Chair, because that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to let you know we didn't hold these back. We got these and we sent them as we.
Yeah, I understand that, and
Yeah.
like you said, even if we were to adopt what you're proposing for conditions, I'm saying I haven't had enough time
Yeah.
to consider it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chris, can I just say also too, that when you were giving your presentation, that's the first, one of the thoughts I had, is when you continually said, you can write this in as a condition. I'm sitting here thinking, I need more time. I mean, to think about it and to think about what conditions do we want to put, because that's what we can do. We can approve with conditions. And when you were saying that, that's the first thought that I had is I need, that came to my mind, and the fact that I would like more time to think about those suggestions that you have.
Sure, and absolutely, Commissioner, and I guess, and certainly, to be honest with you, yeah, I mean, of course, you folks can take another month. You can I've sat here through other other CUPs that you guys have done. I'm not, we're certainly willing to engage. I think one of the things I wanted to say about conditions, certainly you definitely have the right to put any recommendations and conditions to county commission you want. What we want to emphasize is that, although we're offering up some of these things like the decommissioning, we're going to, instead of giving you a decommissioning plan 120 days after, which the ordinance requires, the company's saying we'll give it to you 6 months prior. So these are things what we would term as reasonable conditions, where we would get into discussion, and perhaps we will over the next couple months or however long it takes you folks to do it, where we want to stick to it, that these are the ones that kind of what we put forward there. We can't really go beyond those. So when I say 45 decibels at the house, if you folks were to go to a condition that would be more than that, then we're going to have disagreement on those. So we're trying to offer up what we believe are reasonable conditions that are aligned with state citing, other things like that. So that's just kind of, but yeah, absolutely. And I'm certainly not saying that you should not delay it for another month. That's all. But yeah, I mean, certainly you'll have a lot of, if you guys were to pass this without any conditions, I will fall over and probably have a stroke in the hallway there. It's not going to happen. You folks need to take the time to do what you need to do.
Thank you.
Gary, we have a recording of the presentation, correct?
Yes.
All right, and with that,
Chris, I have one question that I think should be cleared up by the people
Sure.
before we go into public comment. And any one of you can answer it. Your conditional use permit request is dated July 8th, 2024. And in your conditional use permit, on page 3, under applicants, you identify the applicant as Swan Lake LLC, and parents duly authorized to do business in South Dakota. However, this South Dakota Secretary of State Certificate of Authority indicates that Swan Lake Wind LLC application for a certificate of authority has an effective date of August 1st. So as of the date you requested the CUP, Swan Lake Wind LLC had not yet received due authorization to do business in South Dakota. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'll tell you, so the first I've heard of that, I can kind of take a look into that. I think for the purposes of the CUP, of course, it was duly authorized in South Dakota far in advance of the hearing that would be the first part of facilitating the actual conditional use permit. So I'm not sure from a perspective that matters at the point now that it's been registered in South Dakota.
But you said on page 4 in your application, page 3, applicants. The project developer and applicant for the Yankton County CUP is Swan Lake Wind LLC, duly authorized to do business in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. And yet when I went to the South Dakota Secretary of State's website, and it's time-stamped, that certificate of authority, Foreign Limited Liability Company, I, Monet Johnson, Secretary of State of South Dakota, hereby certify the application for certificate of authority to transact business in this state for Swan Lake Wind LLC with an effective date of August 1, 2024. So that statement on page 3 under applicants duly authorized to do business in South Dakota appears to be incorrect.
Yeah, again, I would have to look to see, but let's assume for the purposes that that's accurate. It does sound like possibly the actual filing of the materials in South Dakota, they got out of whack on that timing. From a impact point of view is what I'm saying is I don't think that impacts the ability to receive a CUP, which this is just the first step of that.
On page 4 of your application under project schedule, you state, quote, construction is scheduled to begin in May 2027. Construction will take approximately 10 months to complete. Commercial operation, parens, delivering power to the customer, will begin in December 2027. What was the rush to file in July of 2024? Why couldn't you wait until, say, October or November of 2024?
Well, everything, so this is actually just one of the start of many processes. So you have getting the county level permit. You actually don't even, we don't technically even have a final array until you and the county commission, of course, have concluded the process. Because there could be something that requires changes and movements, which could require refiling at different agencies from FAA to, of course, and here we have a statewide process that takes essentially a year to go through. So this being the first of a process, a sequential process, when this application was ready, we have to get it on file in order to actually meet what seems like quite a distance, but in reality, because of the layered permits and activities that take place, we don't really have much time to wait. So to wait that many more months is actually would be problematic.
So when you filed on July 8th, were you aware that the Yankton County Commission was already considering revisions to Article 26?
Yes, I was here, and others were here as part of the process, and there, you had the committee that was formed before that. Yes. But the thing about ordinance revisions, and so this is again from a land use perspective, there's a couple things. So when there's potential ordinance revisions, they aren't finalized until they're finalized, and we don't know when that would be, if ever. We don't know what form that will take. And so we don't, when the application is ready to file, we have to move as what the project requires. Because otherwise, if you wait, that could be, who knows, when actually some ordinance revisions would take place. And the one thing I'll say, just to kind of regroup on one point about the conditions, which again, that's totally appropriate. But one thing, that's the discipline, if you believe in, this is kind of our land use rule of law, if we believe in the rule of law, conditions are appropriate if they're done for the appropriate good faith purposes. They can't be a backdoor way to try to block a use that is otherwise permitted. That's the only thing I'll put there, because sometimes that's going to say, hey, do conditions that are actually fatal for that purpose. So I'll just do that. But from a ordinance revision process, until they're in effect, we can't assume they will become in effect at some time. So we do have to move forward at the appropriate time for the project.
I moved to Yankton County in February of 2018, and shortly after that, I had been a resident of Iowa, Sioux City, for well over 20 years at that point. I went to the DMV to get a driver's license. And if you've done that and you moved into the state, you found out that they don't accept any other state's certification for the fact that you're a citizen of the United States. I had to provide a birth certificate, and if I had made a material misstatement in my application, it would have had serious consequences. And now it appears to me that this is a material misstatement in this application. duly authorized to do business in South Dakota when this certificate, when they were not duly authorized at that time. This is a problem.
Yeah, and I hear and I understand where you would like this to go, but I can tell you, I don't think there's anyone that would have that kind of just time sequential difference as being anything material. I don't even think that's close. Because again, in order to perform under the CUP, it would need to take place. For the filing of the application, I don't think that's remotely material.
So more fodder for the reason to take more time. In addition, your financial numbers in your presentation here are at variance with this full-page ad in Saturday's Yankton Press and Dakota. In here, it says, the Swan Lake Wind Project is expected to provide $1 million a year in additional tax revenue. Now, if you take that,
Yeah, that's for the whole project. I was giving you the Yankton only.
I know you didn't make the ad, I'm just telling you that there's a difference between what it says in that advertisement and what you have here.
But what I'm explaining the difference. So that in the newspaper, what you have is the entirety of the project.
Right,
And what you have in front of you is just the Yankton only impact.
right. And if there's 37 turbines in Yankton County, and there's 97 total, that means each turbine is taxed at the rate of about $1,100. So 37 turbines times $1,100 is a little over $370,000. And yet your presentation here shows that the Yankton County subtotal in year one is $317,000. So I don't get that. And that requires more time. It requires me to do more analysis.
Well, I will reiterate now, no part of the review of an ordinance or excuse me, of CUP includes that type of analysis. So this is information that goes above and beyond. So if the answer is it's based upon the tax the county receives, that's not one of the criteria, and I don't even think it would be an appropriate criteria to include.
I think Mike's point here is that when you submit information to us, it is our job to make sure it is correct.
Sure.
Because it becomes part of the public record. And the folks in the audience are going out to our website and reading those documents. And I have been spending hours going through your drawings, which I have to take a picture with my phone and zoom in because I can't read them. And then I see missing circles where there should be a circle around a residence. So, I mean, I think Mike's point is spot on. When you provide the information, we could certainly say, wow, that's a lot of information, you're good to go. But I don't think any of us look at our job that way. Our job for the Board of Adjustment is to go through those details. So, and I don't think anybody sitting here disagrees with that statement.
Thanks, Sherry. So at this point, I'm gonna go on to public comment. With that, I'm gonna give everybody 3 minutes apiece. Please come up to the podium, state your name for the record, speak into the microphone. I wanna prevent this from being just a back and forth all night. As a planning commission, we're going to hear your comments, your concerns. Anything that you want addressed is what we will take into consideration and ask for clarification and everything. It doesn't have to be an argument back and forth is what I'm trying to prevent here. So with that, everybody be respectful of time, be respectful of each other, and we'll start that off, whoever wants to go first.
Are you timing? Or do you want me to? I can time too.
You can time.
You're closest, Sherry.
That's why I sit on this side.
I can figure out how to run it again. Let's see.
Evening, my name is Matt Conway. Good to see you all again. I'd like to address the sound issue first off. I'm out in my yard the other night just because I was curious, and he likes to say, well, 45 inside the house. And I went out in my yard and it was bouncing around 30, 35. And that's when the dog was making noise too. So in the house is even quieter. There's gonna be one right across the road from me. I think they're setting them at half a mile. 2 just to the east of me. I think there needs to be more setback here. And they kind of put everybody in a box and they don't take anything into consideration. I can sleep by a railroad track in my semi. Rocks me to sleep. The wife can't. Everybody's different. So they're putting everybody in a box, you know, saying this and that. The money, if you read the thing, it all says subject to change. And if they quit getting 85% of the energy subsidies, then nobody's getting any money. So, and I've been in these sites, that's big stuff, and the roads are gonna get busted up and stuff. So I'd ask you to put it off until we get some more information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Burns from Yankton. We're still having this discussion. Now they're coming on the other end to try to force their way in, telling us how we should think, telling us what rules we should have. Meanwhile, lying, misrepresenting, bribing. Have I missed anything? Whatever happens, we're going to be dealing with these guys for decades. And we got to be able to trust them. We got some funky stuff going on. Now, the other thing is this county recognized that zoning need to be reviewed and updated 8 months ago. I can't tell you how many dinners I have missed trying to get this thing straight. And it's sitting in the county commission, and they need to get it done. And that's what we need to be talking about, because one thing we can all agree on in this county, and certainly in this room, at 1,500 feet is baloney. That is totally, that's not even close. Okay, if we end up at a mile, we end up mile and a half, we'd like to see, everybody wants to see 2 miles or none. 4 miles, 5 miles. On the wind task force, we heard from the people telling us no at all. 5 miles, 4 miles, 2 was already a compromise. Now we may have to go lower than that, and they're coming out of some all directions with all this craziness with their expert lawyers and pocket protector guys that know everything. You know, we really need to get a handle on what's going on, and we definitely need more time to be working with the same page, the rules that the people of Yankton County want to have. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to commend you guys for looking at the documents and finding some obviously glaring errors.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Larry Rotunda. I live north of Mayfield. We own 300 acres there. I guess ultimately everything comes down to the dollar bill in our society. And we know exactly whether Republican, Democrat, or Independent, what inflation's done to the dollar bill. When they talk about restoration costs, they're saying that we'll deposit a sum of money, I guess per windmill, with the state or the county, whatever. And then within 5 years, is it, that they'll take a look again to see if that amount's correct? I tell you, the inflation that we're experiencing right now, given the administration in Washington, D.C., who knows what it's going to be in 1 year, let alone 5. So I really have problems because I assume Swan Lake Wind is probably a fairly thinly capitalized limited liability company, that they have some sort of agreement with Next Gen Energy 2 levels up. But my question would be, is there any kind of support agreement that if the production tax credits end, which right now they're scheduled to end in 2032, and we're looking at the estimated life of these windmills at between 15 to 25 years, 2032 ends a lot sooner than the estimated life. And we're talking about expensive restoration costs, given the concrete, given the underground pipeline that's going to need to transmit the energy to the generating stations or whatever they are. And I don't really, and ultimately, there's a holding company in Jupiter, Florida that is 2 levels above Swan Lake. And that basically is the old Florida Power and Light. My question would be, if the production tax credit ends, what happens to the viability of these dinosaurs sitting out in the field? I mean, let's be honest, they're butt ugly on a good day. And those of us who are near some of the locations don't want to look at them. We don't want to have the wildlife destroyed, either by rotating propellers, or there are studies that indicate that it does affect wildlife, and some of us are hunters. The other thing that isn't mentioned, granted, it's cheap energy if everything works right. But as we found out in Texas 3 years ago, when it got cold, when it got cloudy and windless, people died, people froze. But I assume that most of the energy generated by these things are going to end up on the grid. They're not going to benefit South Dakota any. Now, I may be wrong. You can correct me. But I assume that's where it's going to end up. And then, there's health-wise, there's a lot of
If you could wrap it up here.
Okay,
right over.
health-wise, there's concerns, but it's more than just the sounds you hear. There's sounds that you don't hear. And I'd be more than happy to give you the information on that. Thank you.
Hello, Rodney Slutton from North Yankton County. Under the proposed CUP, 2 turbines will be placed on the same section east of my house, and then 1 turbine will be west of my house. And the power grid line would be right next to my tree grove, which is, 150 to 200 feet away from the house. So that is more closer than I am comfortable with. On November 26, 91, I sustained a traumatic brain injury from a pickup accident. I was sleeping and stood on black ice. Wife stood on black ice and spun. I spent 5 weeks in a coma and 6 months in the hospital, and many years of off and on rehab after that. So that was 33 years ago, this November 26th. So I've been dealing with this for a long time. People with brain injuries often develop seizures. These seizures are commonly triggered by blinking lights. And I've had to leave rooms because all of a sudden strobe lights came on during a performance. Because my brain has to work so hard to do its everyday tasks, I'm very sensitive to distractions such as vibrations, sounds, flashing lights. Because of my disability, I need protection of setbacks. People with brain injuries, Parkinson's, PTSD, epilepsy, EMF sensitivity, environmental illness, anxiety, and mental illness need setbacks to protect us from the adverse reactions of the sound, light, EMF, and vibrations associated with turbines sited closer than 5 miles from the property line. The American with Disability Act, ADA, requires local governments to assure that accommodations are made for disabled people. As people get older, many of them are more easily disturbed by sounds, vibrations, and flashing lights. I am 61 years old, and many of the people in Mayfield and Turkey Valley are much older than I am. 5 mile setbacks are reasonable accommodations for disabled people. The task force recognized the non-participating people of Yankton County need protection of setbacks and include them in the proposed ordinance update. Please deny Swan Lake CUP until the new ordinance is complete and non-participating people are protected. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Jay Jensen, and I guess one thing I wanted to ask of these guys was they talked about the distance from existing dwellings to their wind towers. What about houses that were I have a neighbor that just moved a house in about 3 months ago. Was he considered in this planning?
So, we'd have to, Mr. Chair,
I-
answer questions you want, or we'd have
So-
all the end, however you would like.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll address it at the end, and I'm taking notes
Yeah.
on it, but, yeah, so one of the questions would be, how new is the study of existing houses? So,
okay,
Go ahead,
that's
continue.
all I needed to ask. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Mike Swenson. I'm just about a 60-year resident of Yankton County, served on the Township Board for 35 years. I do not speak on their behalf. First things first, with what this gentleman, I'm sorry I don't know your name.
Mike?
Yes, I know that. He brought up all these legal deals. What's your interpretation of this? And we can end this right now.
My interpretation is that's something that's been complied with at this time, and it's not material. So the question is, at the time they made the application,
They did not exist.
they didn't exist, but now they've overcome that.
At the time they made their application, did they exist?
They weren't, they might have I don't know if I assume they didn't exist, but at the time.
As
they
far as the
existed.
state was concerned, did they exist?
The state, I'm guessing not. I
If
didn't
they
look at
did
the
not
documents on
exist,
it,
in your legal
They-
opinion,
But they exist today.
is their
and
permit
at the
still
time.
a discussion?
My opinion, it's not material anymore. It's not an issue.
You're Yankton County State's Attorney, are you not?
I am.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we don't get in arguments with
I'm just
people on our
asking a
commission and board.
question. Okay. I didn't have opinion. I didn't know nothing about this till last Tuesday night. I came to the meeting, and I'm still not speaking on behalf of the township. I'm neither for or against them. I'm gonna state that. I thought Tuesday night the steps taken were excellent. The commission set up a task force. They had setbacks, that were fair. But now, come to find out, everything that was talked about last Tuesday night does not apply to what's going on here tonight, is the way I understand it.
You're correct.
I'm correct. The way I understand it, if you were to issue this and it went to the county commission, regardless of what happens from here on out, non-participating participants could have a tower within 1,320 feet of their residence.
Unless we offer a condition of greater than 1,320 feet.
Which the commission can change. I think a lot of people don't know what's going on.
This is
for
just
sure.
a recommendation.
Yes, okay. Participating 1,000 feet. correct? 500 feet from a right-of-way. That means 500 feet from a road, correct?
550. It's
550?
1.1
Okay,
times the
550.
total height.
So that's what would happen if they pass this, regardless of what they do down the road. They talk a lot about sound tolerance. The other night at that meeting, they said to ask everybody to be quiet and listen to the fan run the air conditioner, and they said that was 0.4. Now your sound tolerance, is that at the property line or at the residence?
The sound that they measured according to their study that they submitted was at the residence.
At the residence?
Yes.
As well as the property line.
And the property line, so, and I guess that's one thing that I'd like more time to go through
Yeah.
as well. I guess to wrap it up, do you have any?
Yeah, I guess I think that should be 0, in my opinion. And as far as for the proper value, whether the tower be a quarter mile or 2 miles, and you find no change in value on that, I find that hard to believe. I'm just gonna speak for the guys that signed up for it. On the decommissioning, was I under the impression that you were talking about you're putting money aside to decommission them?
We'll ask those questions or clarity on those.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do know that the next county, they require an escrow. That's part of their permit. I
Thank you.
guess. We got 30 seconds left.
I'll give you 30 more seconds, then we need to move on so someone
All right.
else has a chance to talk.
I guess my point is to you, gentlemen, your timing is a little funky, as we've already figured out, and you, on your website, when I was out here in the parking lot, I pulled it up on my phone. It read, "We believe in building strong relationships and supporting your community." In fact, you offered to give Yankton County Ambulance $10,000, which they refused, and rightfully so. If you were that community-oriented, I don't see the point in waiting with the disadvantage of waiting months or withdrawing your application, but I think you took care of that yourself.
Anybody else from the public wish to comment?
My name is Thomas Conway. I live in northern Yankton County, and I think we need to do some more research. I mean, 2 days really isn't much for the amount of information. So I recommend that you guys either push back your decision, or I would recommend denying the CUP as there is missing information, as Swan Lake LLC wasn't even a thing when they put in for the permit. And I'm asking that as a future Yankton County landowner and farmer. Another point we need to look at, there are counties in South Dakota, in other states, all over the US, that are pushing these back. They're denying these things going into the counties. Now there's a reason of that. And another point, they say it won't bother the wildlife. I've looked at the map right where these transmission lines are gonna go. Right where one of the transmission lines is gonna go is a spot right where I hunt. It's a low spot next to a field. There is 6 deer beds in there. There's pheasants. How is trenching a big line through there not gonna affect that? I go out there, even not during hunting season. I sit out there with my dog and watch this. Watch the deer move around, watch the wildlife. It's peaceful. How are 2 big turbines right there, right to the east, where they're gonna be? They trench in these transmission lines. How is none of that gonna affect it? I would like to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I am Barbara Steskel. For the past several months, the task force has heard hours and hours of testimony of the dangers of what these commercial wind energy conversion systems, CWECs, have the possibility to do to everything from microbes in the soil, crops, beneficial insects that pollinate crops, the temperature changes harming crops, injury and death to wildlife in all stages of their life, financial costs to townships, the county, and the residents, up to and including various issues that harm the human population of the county. Having heard these issues, the task force and you have done an amazing job of preparing a comprehensive plan that was mostly adopted by the boards. I commend all of you for the work that's been completed. Having heard all these issues and bringing forth your recommendation for a plan to protect all aspects of this county's land, animal kingdom, and human residents, you have given notice to county government on all levels of these dangers. I believe that you have covered most, if not all, of the issues that have come to light via other people's experiences and independent scientific studies. Everyone who has an interest in what you have done can no longer claim ignorance of possible detrimental conditions posed by the CWACs who have applied for this conditional use permit. In view of this, if this CUP is approved and grandfathered in under the old inadequate zoning protections, any harms that occur that could have been mitigated by the updated zoning regulations could very well result in litigation between residents and the county. It's doubtful that anyone will attempt to gain redress from a large, impersonal group of international corporations, but will instead look for reparation from the county that failed to protect them, especially when that county was fully informed of possible risks. To protect the entire county, including the governmental bodies making the regulations for the county, please deny the proposed CUP in question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Mike Nutley, Northern Yankton County, Turkey Valley Township Supervisor. This project, we didn't ask them to come here. This is a corporation, and what I listened to tonight, them telling us we should write this, this, and this into our, that scares the crap out of me. It really does. And the other thing that I'm most concerned about is my kids and my grandkids. We deal with this short term, most of us in this room. But I don't want my kids and my grandkids stuck with a company. I mean, it's an LLC. They're limited liability, so we can't hold them. They can dissolve and it's gone. And I don't think that, we don't need that. We don't want that. We are not in that bad a financial shape that we need this. And if we are, we need to realign some other things we're doing in this county. So my request is that you guys deny this, and we don't need it. Thank you.
My name is Steve Brockmuller. One of the things that came up back in February was a letter we received, those of us that were within the wind farm area, and it was from the Western Area Power Administration, WAPA, and it concerned environmental assessment to be prepared by NextEra. I hadn't heard any follow-up on that. I did participate in the Zoom meeting. I submitted a lot of comments to them with regard to this. So I called yesterday, and I did get a call back from one of their representatives, and he indicated that NextEra is working on a draft environmental assessment at this time. And he hoped that it would be submitted sometime in September. They could do their review, submit comments back, and then get a final copy of that environmental assessment. At that time, once it's finalized, then I guess I understand it will be submitted for public review. One of the things he did mention, and I think this adds a little bit of urgency to their application process, that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, I was in the car, I couldn't take notes to them. There was a bat species that is going to be put on more of an endangered species list, I would assume is what he meant. So that's kind of a little bit of their hurry, he thought, to get this thing moving along. At the commission meeting, I think there was a lot, well, obviously there's a lot of people here that are opposed to this, and some 100, 150 people. And I think one of the commissioners mentioned that, well, yeah, but there's 23,000 people in Yankton County, and maybe they want it. Well, maybe we should put it to a ballot, put it on, take a vote. Now, I did talk to the auditor today, and she felt it's too late for this coming November, just because she's going to be start printing the ballots here within the next week. But I mean, if it's next April, I mean, yeah, maybe we should do that. Let's see how many people in Yankton County really do want that. I would be. It takes 5% of the to get the petition on the ballot. Be 5% of the population to sign that petition. It seemed like too, talking about probably things that are missing in the packets and so on. I noticed on the notice of the public meeting, the applicant address is Juno Beach, Florida. The return envelope had Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but it was postmarked August 2nd from Blaine, Washington, which is about as far away as you can get in continental United States. And that's why it probably took, we didn't get ours till the 9th, some got on the 10th, but I guess that's, I'm not sure why all the different addresses, but and where Blaine, Washington comes in at, near Vancouver, but thank you.
Thank you.
If some of you that have tried to come up a couple of times just wanted to come kind of stand next to the podium, that way you don't get run over every time, that's cool.
My name is Lori Sletton. I'm a fifth-generation farmer near Pearson's Corner in Mayfield Township. If this CUP is approved, an access road and cable would run right along our north property line, a few hundred feet out our back door, and 2 turbines would be located in our section, right over the fence line. Swan Lake proposes to build 37 turbines. A total of only 20 property owners will receive direct financial payments for the turbines built. Of those 20, only 7 live on the land with the turbines. Some of them are out of state, most of them are in Sioux Falls. There are about 120 habitated non-participating residences in Mayfield and Turkey Valley townships. Last week, over 150 people who do not want the dangerous industrial wind invasion in our county showed up to the county commissioners meeting to make our concerns known to you. Of the 30-plus people who spoke, only 2 advocated for industrial wind, and they do not live near the land proposed to have turbines. We turned in 150 signatures on petitions asking for a ban of industrial wind and protections of 5-mile setbacks if industrial wind were allowed to come onto our farm ground. We have more than 50 ready to turn in for next week, and they're addressed to this body too. The people of this county have made it clear, we do not want industrial wind here. Last Saturday, we had a team of 4 people from our township who started going around and canvassing the 2 townships. And you can imagine there were some delays. Mostly people aren't home. And if the neighbors start going to the neighbor's property, there's a lot of visiting that goes on. But we have 58 of those petitions from our county to give to you tonight. We, the people of this township, live on the land zoned as agriculture. We produce food for America. We believe that industrial wind does not belong here, and we believe it will harm our families, our livestock, our wildlife, and our farms. And we are the people that live here, and we're the ones that get to decide, not a foreign company, an out-of-state company. The old outdated Article 26 does not provide non-participating residents any protections from the dangers of industrial wind projects. We believe that wind is bad for our county. Industrial wind should not be placed on land that is zoned agriculture. Industrial complexes should not be put where residents are, where people are. And this is our county. And if we don't want them to come here and build an industrial complex in the middle of our farms, then we should not allow them, and they can't tell us what they will do in our land. Please deny the CUP for Swan Lake Wind, and I have these 58 petitions, and we will continue the survey. But that is, out of like 122 residents, we have 58 so far in just 4 days. The people don't want them. Thank you so much.
Where the greens change is 1,500 feet, less than. That's my back porch view. That's why I bought it. Where the greens change, it's not very far. See where the greens change? Less than 1,500 feet. I bought this property. I have a 50-foot porch across there that I put so I could look at that. That windmill will sit right in where the green changes. It's where it's already set feet. See where the green changes? 1,500 feet. That's not very far. See where the greens change back there? It's 1,500 feet from my back wall. There'll be 2 more on each side.
Could you
And
come
that
up to the
will count.
podium and state your name for the record, please?
I will. My name is Marlis Jensen. I live in the northern part of Yankton County. And I have a beautiful view. 50-foot of deck that looks out at this beautiful field, right where wind turbine will be. 1 straight out, 1 on each side, 2 on each side. Question that I didn't hear answered was, how much of the energy does South Dakota get back? Not sure about that. What about the bats? Has that survey been done? I have lots of bats in my trees, unfortunately in my house sometimes. But you know what? They have a purpose. And wind turbines need to have that survey done. I'm not saying wind turbines are bad, but I'm also saying not everybody wants one in their own backyard. And if the public in this county doesn't want one, I'm just asking you to remember, we're asking you to represent us. That's what your job is. And they stated how many they have already in South Dakota. So why do you have to put more where they're not wanted? We live in South Dakota for a reason. And 1,500 feet is too close. They talked about if you lived in some of these other areas, you know, there was so many more turbines in the area with all the other people. That's why we don't live there. "60 decibels. I looked up when we were back here, standing back here. It says 40 to 60 decibels is about the equivalent of a window air conditioner. And he says it won't bother you in your garden. I don't know about you. I don't want to listen to that. I want to listen to the nothingness. I want to listen to the birds. I want to listen to my horse snorting across the way. Those are the things that matter. They're 500 feet high. Something that's 500 feet high, you can see that for a long ways. A long ways. I might not only see the ones that are just in the sections beside me, I'll see the ones, the 37 more. I've always joked, well, first of all, living just a little bit on the north side of Yankton County, toward the north of Yankton County, it gets flat pretty quick up there. We don't have quite the hills there that you do here. And I've always lived in the flat part of South Dakota. And our joke has always been, I can watch my dog run away for 3 days. If I can watch my dog run away for 3 days, I'm going to see something 500 feet tall for a long ways. A long ways. Okay? They talked about it not affecting livestock. It may not affect cattle, but horses are different. I have horses. And I don't know if gentlemen that aren't from here realize it or not, but the cowboy, that's just a statement. It's just we don't ride cows, we ride horses. And it affects them a little bit more than it's going to the cattle. How many of you guys have one of these in your yard? How close do you guys live to one? Just wondering. One gentleman said he grew up in a rural area. Yeah, where do you live now? Do you have one of these in your backyard? And why Swan Lake, LLC? None of you guys are from Swan Lake. You're not local. Don't pretend to be so that we think you are.
All right, can we wrap it up here?
Yep. Are you going to buy our houses if that property value goes down? Because I'm willing to bet that they will. But if you guarantee that it won't, are you willing to buy our houses back if then that property goes down? One more thing about the $1 million to one county for the schools. I'm a teacher. My husband's a principal. You divide $1 million up amongst all the schools in a county, we're not going to see much of that. Thank you.
Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but something's been bothering me. You know, we got this company NextGen that's always here doing presentations and things, and yet we've got the application from Swan Lake LLC, and I've been very confused about who's who and who's making the application. Seems like NextGen is a real entity with real people that come here. Who's Swan Lake LLC? And now I'm starting to get a little bit of that picture with this limited liability, and seems like a sleight of hand to me. Anyway, I'd like somebody to look into that. Thank you. Clark.
Tandra Baker is my name. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for your unwavering commitment and time to everything that you have done here. I know it's been a lot, and it has certainly not gone unnoticed. So out of curiosity, I took a look at the Planning and Zoning website today, and something that it states is that a conditional use permit is to promote the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, appearance, prosperity, and general welfare of the district. Over the past several months, it has become abundantly clear to me and everyone else who's been coming to these meetings that granting a CUP for an industrial wind turbine development absolutely does not meet any of those standards that you have on your website. Out of curiosity, confusion, and quite frankly, I'm kind of the girl that doesn't put up with anybody's crap. One of the things that I've noticed is there's been a whole lot of misinformation tonight, and it doesn't come from the people standing up here talking right now. I have looked hard at both sides of this, and the only value that I can see coming from this is these people right out here. I am so freaking proud of every one of you rising up in Turner County and Yankton County. Everybody sitting here saying, no, this is not what we want. You do not have a home here in our agricultural land. That is why we're here tonight. Everybody is coming to you and the commissioner's saying, no more crap. I don't care where we're getting bullied from or who's doing the bullying. You guys get to stand here right along with all of these people and all of those petitions with your integrity and your morality intact. And that's what we're asking from you. So we're asking that you stand with us and saying no more of this. We've all put in a lot of time, you guys more than anybody else. There's been a trap that's been set, it's been baited, and we're asking you to not fall into it. Because if you look across the nation, you look at our neighboring counties, our neighboring states, and all over the country, and quite frankly, all over the globe, every single one of them is starting to say no. Why? We cannot go back in time. We have to look at our future generation. Okay? Please deny this CUP. Setbacks of 5 miles, that's great, but let's do better than that. Let's really stand up and rise up for our state and say no more of this crap. Please deny this CUP. Thank you.
Well, it's time for the villain to speak. I even wrote something down this time. Okay, some say wind farms are not ag.
Name and.
Oh, I'm sorry, Roger Hofer. Some say wind farms are not ag, but without power, there is no modern ag. Electric vehicles are not the problem yet, it's population. 1960, the U.S. population was 179.3 million, up 19% from 1950. In 2020, it was 329.5 million. South Dakota in 1960 was 680,000.
In 2020, it was 809,000. In 2022, it jumped to 909,000, a growth of 10,000 in 2 years. Some of you have tried to paint the picture of a giant three-winged red-eyed monster that will drive people insane, cause crop failures, livestock mutations, and kill wildlife. In fact, the first windmills were built in Prussia 1,000 years ago and later adapted and made famous by the Dutch. Mr. Olson and Mr. Anderson have provided us with much data from years of research in this country and abroad. Not hearsay or opinion, but in writing for all to see. Wind power is nothing new. Landowners in Yankton County were signed up back in the late 1980s and received $500 a year for future construction. Some of you moved in since, did not do your research, and now cry property rights. How about the rest of us? They've been waiting for 40 years for them. Why were these ordinances put back into effect years ago? The cry from around the country is to update our electrical grid. Our dams are coming close to the end of their life. Coal mines are being closed. Nuclear has been a bad safety record, and nobody wants its waste. Wind power for now is the best answer. Its spreads are generating out through the grid to protect us from severe weather or foreign attacks. It helps pay farmers when the markets are down. It helps local and state governments keep taxes down and makes available electricity to electric companies. Nextel has complied with Yankton County ordinances and the state PUC, so the change in the ordinance now shows undue bias. I'll ask again, is there anywhere that zoning is more restrictive than this county? If not, let's look to the future.
Thank you, Roger.
Ernest Strautmeyer. I'm not from Lincoln County. I'm from Lincoln County, not Yankton. They proposed to do wind towers in Lincoln County, and after discussion and after the public was informed, they did take it to a vote, and rules got set stringent enough that they did not come in with wind towers. They talked to you about the decibels and the sound. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professor, I'm not a lawyer. But when we was hunting out by Westington Springs, where they've got a string of these wind towers, in November there was an evening where it was a heavy humidity, and that sound traveled. We were at 1 mile from the towers, and that sound traveled through that heavy humidity air to where it was just as strong 1 mile away as it was at the towers. If farm crops, they have their fires, these towers occasionally get on fire, and if they do have a fire and it hits the field, if it's a corn field in the fall where it's dry, or a bean field, they're not covered by insurance. If the airplanes they won't be able to spray with airplanes in all these areas because of all the things that could come along there too. What do you do with the fiberglass blades? That's been a problem, and they've shipped them from other states, and for a while it's the landfill at Sioux Falls was accepting them, but then that got stopped too. So where do they go with them? I don't know. I spoke with a telephone repair servicemen that would make routes, and he says he's seen ice chunks that have came off from the wind blades as much as 1.25 miles away from the towers. If, when they're in airplanes flying over these in the wintertime, there's no frost in the ground where the power lines are, and it melts the snow because of the heat generated from the power lines going underground. If they do have a fire, what do? The fire people are told just to stay back and they have to let it burn. When I was at a Dakota Fest in Mitchell, a young man came by, we had a booth there, and he said he was one of the lucky ones. There was 3 of them up in the unit up on top. 3 of the guys, 2 of them got out, the other one wasn't able to. And when they're telling you about that it's your administrative job to do the ordinances only, it's not your responsibility to go more than that, I didn't realize that they were in a position to tell you what your job is. Economic impact. When they talk about economic impact, look at the license plates on the vehicles that are doing the work. We just had a gas pipeline done by our place, by my mom's house, and the majority of the license plates were out of state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Louis Johnson, Vollen. In all of the comments I've heard, we don't want wind, and from other things that other people made, we don't want coal, and we don't want nuclear. I happen to like electricity. I have used a lot of it over the years. We gotta generate it one way or another. I am not involved in this fight. It makes no difference to me whether they get a permit or they don't. Now, is the federal government mandating the power companies, are they not to that point yet where they want them to use a certain percentage? Okay. That's a rumor I'd heard. But so rather than come up with all of these things that are wrong, how are we going to generate the electricity that we need to run the air conditioner and the furnace and everything else that we use pretty much 24 hours a day? And rather than be such negative Nellies about everything, let's find a solution. Let's not wait until somebody comes in with a permit application and go, oh crap, we got to change the rules. Been through that. It's not fun. Either get rid of zoning and just tell people no when they show up, or have a set of rules and follow them until there is a problem. And I have heard that the wind turbine blades are being recycled and used for reinforcement in concrete now. Thank you.
Is there anybody else wishes to make a public comment?
Commissioners, I'm James Pyle, and I live this county. And my concerns are with the waste products that come from the wind turbines, how often they clean them, what all the compounds are, which ones are dangerous, and that cleaning process in case there is wind. Okay. If there's wind blowing or something, some of those particles get on the ground, maybe a portion. If it rains, are they soaked into the aquifer that's in the ground? Because there's lakes and ponds around, but the aquifers themselves. The other concern is, we have dogs and cattle that have really good hearing. And if you can't hear the turbine turning, it doesn't mean that there's still sound for those that can hear better. And it may, many years back, about 30 years ago, they were concerned about the overhead electrical lines and power lines and such, and so we started putting more of them underground because people were being affected in their thinking, their brains, and things like that. So do we know that this quiet sound could still be affecting people's brains? Now, you know, in the petition, do they have an insurance policy that would pay for these people if they have to go see a doctor? You know, are they covering that? Or are they willing to give 20% of their money they're making to the county so that the county can cover these people? And then property taxes. Sure, you can say what you want about them until you're the person trying to sell them. And if they're affected by that, do they cover to make up the difference for those people? Those are the concerns I have.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Olson, and I have been a Yankton County resident all of my life. I grew up in Mayfield Township. I got married after college, and I now live in Turkey Valley Township. And I'm very proud of the ag community. I understand you gentlemen's presentations, but I feel like I farm with my husband. I'm a farmer. I get up every day, we do chores. Part of my chores is reading articles on ag and what's going on in our community, in our world, because it's a global situation. Articles I read continually tell me how much more food we have to raise by 2050. We are already zoned ag. Why are we going for conditional use? Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
My name is Jake McManus. I am from northern Yankton County. So first of all, if they weren't an entity, I don't think we should be discussing this anymore. The CUP is null and void. They need to refile. Secondly, if they can't follow that procedural law, do you think they'll be really friendly to do business with? I don't want to even talk setbacks. I want to talk bans. These guys lied to you. They lied to us. They lied to the farmers. They forced and coerced people to sign up, saying things like, well, your neighbors all signed up, so you might as well because they're going to be around you anyway. Now that the truth has come out and people now that the truth has come out and people can see the maps, they realize that these guys behind me lied to them. And they want out of these contracts, but these guys put non-disclosure agreements in those contracts so they can't get out of them. And they need your help getting out of them because they got nobody else. These guys stuck them in a spot they can't get out of. One of the commissioners on the WIN meeting last week said there's just as much info and studies for wind and against wind, which is simply not true. If that were true, why are there more counties blocking these around the United States than building them? Why are states with more wind, that have wind for more years, the counties next to them are making stronger ordinances or just outright banning them? If these guys weren't doing backdoor deals, they could have just came out in the open and brought their plan out with their maps and showed everybody, and then they could have went and got waivers from the people that are okay with it. then there probably wouldn't have been no problems. I'm not sure what the current setbacks are for ag, for like hog barns or dairies, but there shouldn't be industrial setbacks that are less than them for sure. Future building issues. If somebody wants to build a house, like one of these guys said earlier in the presentation, that it's just cornfields and they're putting wind turbines next to cornfields. What if somebody wants to build a house there in next year, in a couple of years? Are they going to be able to? Because I'm pretty sure in their contracts it says something about a height restriction. People can't build buildings at a certain height, or like 20 times the height of the building has to be away from their turbines. But nobody knows because there's non-disclosure agreements in their contracts, so we can't find out the truth. Also, future building issues. You know, if somebody wants to a neighbor wants to put up a cattle shed or an irrigator, plant trees for a shelter belt, is that going to be possible? And okay, so there's people that have signed up that I've talked to, because I went and talked to quite a few people, and not too many people say they're avidly for this. They basically just said, well, my neighbor's doing it, so I might as well. And I told them, I told them a few issues that I had, and they said, well, if the wind turbines come in, we'll just move away. I'm like, well, that's nice. What about those of us that have to stay here, or that want this to be our home? Do we want barren fiberglass graveyards for the future of Yankton County, or do we want trees and agriculture and animals?
All right, any final thoughts? We'll wrap this up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Dennis Barkley, Mayfield Township, Yankton County. I really don't think. There. All right, Dennis Barkley, Mayfield Township, Yankton County. And I really don't think it's unreasonable for the rural voters of Yankton County to vote for if we want these wind turbines. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Helen Ward. I'm an organic farmer from Turner County, where we will be getting a higher percentage of those turbines if it comes in. I've been reflecting a little bit on some of the comments tonight. There was this question about using electricity. I've used it for 77 years, and the electricity that I have comes from dependable sources like propane, gas, coal, and what's the other one? I know what the undependable one is. It's wind. The energy density of wind is terribly low. About the only time where you got a lot of high energy density is during gales. Lots of wind. And they're feathered in that situation because they can't take the RPMs. So I want dependable electricity, and if I have to have some in case the dependable stuff happens to shut down, we call it a standby generator. It turns out that the big units, whether it be water, gas, or coal, they are told that the wind power has to be used before they come online. But guess what? That means they have to stand by, because as soon as the wind decides to go down, there has to be electricity in the line to take care of where the wind was supposedly to provide it. We're talking about electric power being sent to California, not South Dakota. But I still wouldn't want them on my farmland, nor anywhere around within 50 miles of my line, because I'd be able to see them that far, especially to get to be 800 or 900 feet tall. Money paid. Maybe the government doesn't command that these electric things be built, but we as taxpayers end up paying indirectly for them because of the billions of dollars that are given to these companies to operate at 15% efficiency. That does not make sense. In order to be in business, the electricity system that's producing electricity has to stand on its own. It can't be subsidized by a bunch of Green Deal money. The other thing that bothers me is that it reduces crop production by a number of different ways. Figure at least 25%. Farmers, do your arithmetic. If you've got a certain number of dollars per bushel and 25% of that disappears, there's a lot of guys that aren't going to mess around regardless of how much money they wave in their face, simply because they know it's not going to be there. And they might end up hanging on the hook, having to take care of the decommissioning.
Is there any other public comment? Last chance for public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Okay, so, I guess it's taking notes on a lot of different things that people have said. One of the comments that came up that I didn't consider, which maybe you guys don't know the answer to right off the top of your head, but distance to the houses and how new is that study, I guess.
So can you repeat that?
In your maps and drawings,
Yeah.
you have the houses and residences. At what point was that taken, I guess is one.
So I'm not sure, we will check on that, Mr. Chair. What I can say in addition to that, I want to make sure that we're going to, I recognize you're not going to be voting tonight. That's fine. You need some more information. So what I think it might be useful to you and what we'd offer up tonight is what is some of that information you folks would like? And Commissioner Loos, to your point, if you're having problems measuring off map, we don't want that. If we need to provide you to the county through Gary to the planners, an electronic, like a KMZ file or something like that, that provides turbine locations, that provides the house locations, that provides property lines, we can do that. So if that's something that you would find would be useful. We're certainly not, it's not a requirement, but we're not trying to make people's lives difficult. Whatever we can do for the commission that would help you get folks out, and certainly so we'll answer whatever we can tonight. We can also then, if you have information requests that you already know, we'll take those back. And then in addition to that, Mr. Chair, if you folks, like let's say, your next meeting's a month out, I believe, right? If you've got something the next week, please email through Gary and we will absolutely get what we can to you. But something like the locations, we can get you distance to home. That I will check right now. I'll see if I can find out from our consultant here as to when we locked the profile.
Okay, and then, yeah, the KMZ file would be nice, then we could put it on Google Maps and be able to see that exactly.
Yeah, and again, so whatever, for those types of things, we can figure that out and we can work with Gary to make sure that they have, I mean, again, making life a little easier.
All right. So I guess with that,
We'll get that.
unless anybody from the board has any specific questions for him right now, I guess I would make a motion that we continue this at the next meeting.
And again, Mr. Chair, if you guys do have questions, we're happy to answer as many.
Yeah, I have a couple questions here. Could I go? Have you applied for a CUP in Turner County yet? Or are you planning to? When will that be?
We have not. We are working on drafting a CUP application to Turner County.
Okay, so you're applying here in Yankton, but you have not started applying in Turner County?
We are drafting one.
You're drafting one right now?
Yes.
So when do you plan on submitting that to the Turner County director?
Within the next few months.
Next few months?
At most, yeah.
Okay. What's your plan for applying to the PUC in Pierre? Because somebody had made the comment that they had already applied. You have not.
We have not.
When is that going to come around?
After we have the CUP.
After, okay, which makes sense because just looking at something.
Maybe, Commissioner, a little bit of information on that. So, again, the first process is to, in any county in South Dakota is to apply for the CUP. What that does, Commissioner, then is lock in, here where the turbines are going to be. And you've already heard there's many more months of environmental studies that have to be done. And it'll likely be somewhere in the spring, very early summer, that the PUC application will be filed, because all of that information needs to be done and provided then. So it's not going to be immediately after granting the CUP. It's likely right out into the spring, summertime, just to clarify.
Yep. Because somebody had mentioned in the comments or made a comment that you had already been to the CUP, and I just want to clarify that you have not. Have you any discussions with any of the townships for road hauls or anything like that? So this is your first.
No, we have not
stop.
started the township.
So this has been okay. Question I have maybe for our county county attorney. Tuesday night, last Tuesday night at the county commission meeting, it was stated that they are grandfathered in because they applied on July 8th. And whatever laws are in effect or ordinances in effect that's what they're going to follow because they're grandfathered in. I've spent the last week looking through the codified laws, looking at court cases, looking through our ordinance. Where does that power to say they're grandfathered in, where does that come from? Is there somewhere that I can look to say they're grandfathered in? Okay, I would appreciate it because, just the court cases that I looked at, it's they go back to whatever was in place when the CUP was approved. So I would like to have that information to clarify that. Because the reason why is because when you look at the PUC going through their website and looking at the wind complexes that have already been approved, it's very clear in there that it says the proposed facility will comply with all applicable laws and rules. I think it says it a couple times that I saw there. And that's the key. What rules, what laws, at what time? When they apply for, like on July 8th, regardless if they were LLC or not, or is it when the planning and zoning, when we approve it or whatever, or when the Board of Adjustment approves it? So I think that's something that needs to be, clarified to some extent as to, what laws do they have to follow at what point? And just to clarify too, with somebody who mentioned, we were here as a task force in January. No, it was back in December. Our planning and zoning knew we needed to change our wind ordinance because of that personal wind tower that wanted to be applied for. We were here first doing our work here as a county, changing our wind ordinance. Then you guys came in. We were here doing this first. And that's what I was going to clarify. Somebody had said that somebody comes in to get a CUP and then we want to change the rules. We knew this back in the fall that we had to do this, and we started in January. So I just want to clarify that as well. Also, I'd like to know, what's the cost of this whole project? What's the cost?
Well, he'll come up on that again. Just to comment back on the
Okay, go ahead.
On the process, because again, the committee doesn't actually doesn't make the decision as to what the final regs would be. So we have to deal with the regs that are in place, which won't be done until the process that completes itself, if ever. So again, that's when we make the application, we have to deal with the regulations that are in place at that time. Because recommending bodies like a task force, then obviously a planning commission, are simply recommendations that may or may never come to fruition.
I don't have the exact numbers with me today.
For how much it's going to cost?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers with me today.
We can get that.
No idea, not a
We can get
ballpark?
I can get you a ballpark number later.
Okay, gotcha.
Commissioner, Mr. Cameron, did you want to, Mr. Cameron, who's the project director for the region, if you wanted to give a ballpark?
My name is Clay Cameron. I'm Director of Development for NextEra for South Dakota. The approximate cost is about $400 million of capital expense. For a project about 238 megawatts, that's probably an approximate number. And just for the record, there is no overhead transmission line on this project. I think there was some discussion about an overhead transmission line. There is not.
Is there any plans for future expansion? There's been talk, and I've had some people converse with me saying that this is just the beginning, that you're going to continue on that ridge going south into Yankton County.
So this project cannot be expanded because we have a generation interconnection agreement that does not allow for that. You'd have to go through the whole process again to be able to file another generation interconnect, which is be able to connect to the grid. So this specific project would only be whatever size it is at the end of the day, 230-ish megawatts.
Okay, gotcha. And the gentleman who talked about WAPA, I did contact them as well, and that was the same information that I got from them as well. And so that process is still going. And just want to say, and this is my last comment, one of you said you can't use this as a way to block the ordinance, delaying it. Kind of made me a little upset. I'm here for these people. That's the thing. And I think the thing about it is the fact that I think some people in our county that are in positions of power have forgotten that we are here for these people that live here and for the future generations that are coming. And so if we need another month to think about this and do things, I am doing that because I want to protect these people, not because I'm trying to block something. And that kind of turked me off when you said that, okay? Because I think and that's the thing, is that you've forgotten these people are the ones who have to live with this day in and day out. Okay.
Yeah, and to that, and again, no one is making an accusation of anyone specifically or particularly, and of course, more time that's needed to go through that. But that is one of the common misconceptions, that in a more administrative function like this, where the regulations are in place, this body doesn't have that legislative. And that was really more to kind of set the stage, not to make an accusation. Because of course, if there's health or safety things that are appropriate and time's needed to do that, that's not a problem. That should be looked at.
All right, any other questions, comments from the board? Otherwise, I have a motion on the table. Still looking for a second.
Second.
Chris, can I pop in just real quick? I have a comment.
Yep, go ahead, Dan.
Okay. So as we know, the setbacks are paramount in this application, and I would request that you look at the pages 1 through 22, which is behind Appendix D. And Sherry alluded to this, is that the radius, 1,320 foot, should be plotted out, showing the circumference of the circle on each of the 22 sheets. And then second, the dimension, one of the most important pieces, the dimension from the outer edge of the circle or circumference to any setback, whether that be a property line, a house, a structure, a right-of-way, should be shown on and displayed on each one of the 22 sheets. So my recommendation would be to, as it relates to the current submittal, would be to revise and resubmit or postpone.
All right, thanks, Dan.
And so, Mr. Chair, if I might, to that effect, so first of all, I've just publicly agreed to hand over the KMZ file, that then will go to Gary, that'll be public, you can do that. I'll even go one better. If it would be helpful to this commission, if the information, I think, what I'm gathering, and Commissioner Lowe, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the commissioner's name on the phone, but if what you're looking for is what is the distance from a turbine to each of the homes, if you're looking at what the closest distance from a turbine to the property line is, we will give you a table with the turbine number and the homes and the property line. So you don't have to then go in and try to measure. We'll give you the file anyway, the KMZ file, you can measure whatever you'd like. But if you're really looking for what those distances are, we're happy to provide a table of that. We don't need to do it like with just circles and that. If that is what you're looking for, or if you guys want to take a couple days to think about exactly what type of measurements you want, absolutely, request. we're happy to do it. If a table, like to property lines, to homes, participating, non-participating, we'll match it up with the sound levels and the shadow flicker. We'll give it all to you in one spot so that you got that, if that would be helpful. And I'm seeing some nods, and so my commitment to you is by the end of next week, or sorry, a week today, by a week today, which would be 3 weeks prior to your next meeting, if we could use that the Tuesday, a week following, as we will get that information to Gary, then to all of you folks. And I think the way that my understanding is when we send stuff to Gary, we tend to copy you guys anyway. We'll do the same thing, just so there's no delay. And if that would work for you folks, we'll try to get it sooner, but obviously we need to get files together. Would that be helpful, Mr. Chair or Commissioners?
Yep, I think that would be.
All right, we will do that. And also, I mean, again, if you want us to respond to any of the comments we heard tonight, any other questions, we're happy to do so now, or wait till your next meeting. Your preference, Mr. Chair.
Unless anybody from the board has anything specific, I guess I would refer back to the motion. I think Mike had a second.
One thing I
Sherry,
want to
yeah.
clarify is
Yep.
that when we continue on September 10th, I about said the 13th, the 10th, we will not be taking any more public comment, correct? Because
Yes,
we noticed public comment, we took public comment, and then we will continue this discussion where we left off.
Right.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, just to clarify that you'll still want the company representatives here and the experts to ask any of your questions. I recognize public comments closed, but we will still be here to answer any of your questions.
Right.
If that's appropriate.
Yeah, we would want you here to be able to ask questions.
So between now and that day, if you have further comments, our emails are on the website. You can email all of us with your comments and copy Gary on that, and those comments will go into the public record. I just want to make sure you understand that we took public comment on this, and we took it for over an hour. So nobody shows up and is upset.
All right, with that, take a vote on the motion. Continue to the next meeting.
Barkle.
Yes.
Loest.
Yes.
Kettering.
Yes.
Hummel.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
All right, motion carried. All right, with that, takes care of everything on the agenda. We have one final public comment. Any final comments? I'll give you 2 minutes. Come on up. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Loest.
Second, Hummel.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Well, clearly I do too. We have to I'm gonna have to upgrade my highlight.
I have a count tally.